On my 68th birthday, I received a gift that sparked more than just memories. It brought a wave of uneasiness, a tremor of suspicion that would not let me rest, and it all started with a bottle of whiskey. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss my future stories. Leave a comment below to let me know where you're watching from. I carefully set the package down on the worn surface of my dining room table. The cardboard was sturdy, the kind you get when someone actually cares about what's inside, but there was no map, no indication of who sent it, just my name and address, neatly typed on a label. I hesitated for a moment, a knot forming in my stomach. Birthdays were no longer a celebrated event around here, not since many things. I grabbed my pocket knife and carefully cut the packing tape. Inside, nestled in wood shavings, was a bottle of whiskey, not just any whiskey. Mind you, it was a high-end, small-batch bourbon, the kind that costs more than most people's weekly groceries. The glass was thick and heavy, the label a deep, rich brown with gold lettering. It looked expensive, and that's when the unrest really started to creep in, because I recognized that bottle. It was Ethan's taste. Or, at least, it used to be. I picked it up, turning it slowly in my hands, the light catching the amber liquid inside. It was beautiful, undeniably. But it felt wrong. A small white envelope was taped to the side of the box. Inside, a single folded card. Happy birthday, it read, scrawled in a familiar yet distant hand. Ethan's handwriting. I hadn't seen it in what felt like a lifetime. 3 years. 3 years since we last talked, really talked. The words seemed hollow, empty of any real sentiment. Just a polite, obligatory gesture. It was not signed. No love, Ethan. No your son. Just happy birthday. Like he was afraid to commit to even that small commitment. A ghost of a greeting. A whisper from the past. The kind that makes you feel colder than before. I put the card down, my gaze drawn back to the bottle. It was really a cruel joke. Or maybe it was just Ethan being Ethan, oblivious to the realities of my life. Because what he didn't seem to remember, or maybe didn't care to remember, was that I couldn't drink anymore. 3 years ago I had a heart attack, a big one. The kind that makes you gasp for air and stare down the course of mortality. The doctors were clear. No more alcohol. Not even a little bit. It was a sacrifice. Sure, whiskey was a comfort, a small pleasure at the end of a long day. But it was a sacrifice I was willing to make. For my health, for my life. Ethan knew all this. He was there in the hospital room when the doctor explained it all. He saw the grim look on my face, the forced smile I was trying to muster. He knew the consequences. So why send me a bottle of whiskey? Was it a test? A reminder of what I couldn't have? Or was it simply carelessness? I pushed the thought aside and tried not to let it die. Maybe it was just a peace offering, a clumsy attempt at reconciliation. Maybe he actually wanted to bridge the gap that had grown between us. But the doubt lingered, a persistent rumbling beneath the surface. I decided I couldn't hold the bottle. It would just sit there, a constant reminder of what I couldn't have, of the distance between me and my son. Besides, I knew someone who would appreciate it, someone who deserved something nice. Robert Carson. My neighbor, a good man, through and through, always willing to lend a hand, no questions asked. He helped me with everything from fixing the leaky roof to bringing in firewood. He was the kind of neighbor everyone should be so lucky to have. He enjoyed a good whiskey. He deserved it. The next afternoon, I carefully put the bottle in the passenger seat of my truck and pushed it in, as if it were a precious cargo. I felt a little silly doing it, but the thought of it rolling around on the bumpy country roads made me uneasy. The drive over to Robert's place was short, but the thoughts kept swirling in my head. Ethan, the whiskey, Robert, the strange discomfort that won't let me go. I tried to shake it off and told myself I was just being paranoid, but the feeling persisted. Robert was outside when I moved in, working in his garden. He looked up, a smile spreading across his face as he recognized my truck. "Frank, what brings you out here?" he asked, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. I held up the bottle. "Happy birthday," I said, and handed it to him. His eyes widened as he took it, turning it over in his hands. "Frank, that's something else. You shouldn't have." "It's from Ethan," I said, looking at his reaction. Robert's eyebrows rose slightly. "Ethan sent you this?" "Well, I will be. Haven't heard from him in a while." "Yeah, well, he knows I can't drink anymore," I said. "Thought you'd get more use out of it than me." He laughed. You know me too well, Frank. I appreciate it. It's going to be saved for a special occasion. Make tonight special, I said, smiling. He smiled back. I might just do it. Thanks, Frank. Really, it means a lot. I felt a sense of relief as I drove home. The bottle was gone, out of my sight, in the hands of someone who will appreciate it. And maybe, just maybe, it was a small step towards something better with Ethan, but the unrest still continued. That night, as I sat down to a solitary dinner, the phone rang. It was Ethan. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice sounding strained, almost forced. "Happy birthday." "Thanks, Ethan," I replied. "Did you get my present?" "I did," I said. "It was very generous." "So, did you like it?" he pressed, a subtle edge creeping into his voice. "It's a nice bottle," I say, choosing my words carefully, "but you know I can't drink any more." There was a pause, a stroke of silence that felt heavy with unspoken meaning. Then, "Oh, right, the heart thing." "Yeah," I said, "the heart thing. So what did you do with it?" he asked, the edge in his voice becoming more pronounced. "I gave it to Robert," I said. "Thought he'd get more use out of it." The line went silent. Not a short pause, but a long drawn-out silence that felt thick and suffocating. I could almost feel the tension crackling through the phone line. "You gave it to Robert," he finally said, his voice flat, without emotion. "Yes," I replied. "He seemed quite happy about it." Another long pause, then a strange, almost whispered, "Huh," and then he hung up. No goodbye, no explanation, just a sudden, abrupt disconnect. I stared at the phone, a cold fear washing over me. The way he asked about the whiskey, the intense, almost obsessive tone in his voice. It wasn't just politeness, it was something more, something darker, something that made my blood run cold. He knew I couldn't drink, so why send me that particular bottle? Why are you asking so intensely about it? And why would I hang up so suddenly when I told him I gave it to Robert? The questions swirled in my head, each adding to the growing sense of unease. It was not just a peace offering. It wasn't just a thoughtless gift. It was something completely different. And I had a feeling I wasn't going to like what it was. The restlessness gnawed at me all night, stealing my sleep, filling my dreams with shadows and whispers. I tossed and turned, trying to shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong, but it wouldn't go away. Ethan's call turned the generous gift into a cold question mark. I woke up the next morning feeling exhausted and scared. The phone call, the whiskey, the way Ethan talked, it all felt wrong, like a puzzle with missing pieces, and I had a feeling that finding those missing pieces would lead me down a dark and dangerous path. I went through my morning routine, but everything felt untouched. The coffee tasted bitter, the newspaper was filled with bad news, and the clock ticked with unnerving intensity. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was waiting for something. Something bad. The phone rings, shattering the awkward silence. I hesitated for a moment, a knot forming in my stomach. I didn't recognize the number, but I just knew it was it. This was the thing I feared. I take a deep breath and answer. "Mr. Dalton," said a woman's voice, stiff with anguish. "This is Linda Carson, Robert's wife." My heart jumped into my throat. "Linda, what's wrong?" "Robert's in the hospital," she said, her voice shaking. "He collapsed this morning. They think it might be some kind of poisoning." The world seemed to be tilting around her. Poisoning. The word hung heavy and suffocating in the air. "Poisoning," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "What happened?" "He was fine last night," she said, her voice thick with tears. "We had a drink with dinner, and this morning he could hardly stand. The doctors are busy with tests." I didn't speak. My mind was racing, connecting the dots. The whiskey, Ethan's questions, the sudden collapse. "Did he eat something unusual?" she asked. "Drinking anything he doesn't normally drink?" My mouth felt dry. "No," I said slowly, "but I gave him a bottle yesterday." "Whiskey, from Ethan." There was a long pause. In the background I could hear the sounds of the hospital, the beeping of machines, the muffled voices of doctors and nurses. "Whiskey," she repeated, her voice flat. "From Ethan." Another pause. Then, "I'll tell the doctors," she finally said. "If you think of anything else, anything, call me." "I will," I promised. I put the phone down, my hand shaking. The room seemed to spin around me. Poisoning. It couldn't be. It just couldn't be. But the pieces were all there, in a way that made my blood run cold. And it all started with that bottle of whiskey. The disturbing chain of events began with the simplest gift. It began with a bottle. It began with the simplest gift. Gesture that seemed almost benign on the surface. A potential olive branch after years of strained silence. But I knew right away that something wasn't right with this gift. Just gave it away thinking that my neighbor would enjoy the whiskey. Instead, he ended up sick in the hospital. Just by the way, trying to act like nothing happened. I already gave it away at this point. Artie hung up the phone. Then everything just changed. Everything went downhill from there. Ethan's gift almost took our lives. It was the beginning of something. A message. Robert Carson lay in the hospital bed, seemingly asleep or unconscious, as the clicking and beeping of medical equipment signaled that his life was hanging in the balance. My mind flashed back to the bottle. The beautiful amber color of the whiskey as the light plays on it. The casual yet curious tone in Ethan's voice when he asked about it. And now, this Robert, fighting for his life, possibly because of something my own son did, something I unknowingly set in motion. I had to find out the truth, not only for myself, but for Robert and Linda. I had to clear my head and start thinking logically, but the thoughts and memories kept bombarding me. Like artillery shells, there was one thing I had to do, a detail I had to check at home. I explained the urgency to Linda and promised to call with any news. Her eyes, red and tired, reflected a mixture of gratitude and fear. The unspoken question hung heavy in the air. Was the man who almost killed her husband someone I raised? Back home, the silence was deafening. The familiar creaks and groans of the old place seemed to whisper accusations. The October light, still pale and weak, did little to dispel the gloom. I went straight to the kitchen, my heart pounding with every step. The trash can. I had to check the trash. The image of that small, white vial kept flashing in my mind. I lifted the lid, braced myself for what I might find, or rather not find, and there it was, the garbage bag askew, the sign that someone had rummaged through. It wasn't how I left it after I dumped that jar in there just yesterday. I reached in and carefully pulled out the bag, the mundane contents suddenly imbued with a sinister meaning. Empty food containers, junk mail, coffee grounds. I carefully spread the contents on a sheet of newspaper, looking for that small, missing vial, but it was gone, disappear, as if it had never been there. My blood ran cold. Someone had been in my house. Someone was looking through my trash on purpose. That little vial could be key evidence, and now it was gone. I scanned the kitchen, every detail suddenly magnified. The slightly crooked picture frame, the specks of dust dancing in the sunlight, the faint scent of lemon cleaner, all normal, but all possibly tainted by the presence of an intruder. Then my gaze landed on the fridge. On the middle shelf, behind the milk carton, sat a mason jar. A mason jar with the leftover whiskey from the night I gave the bottle to Robert. I completely forgot about it. A small sample, barely half a cup, but possibly a crucial piece of the puzzle. A wave of nausea washed over me as I imagined Robert taking that first sip. The taste of poison masked by the smooth, familiar flavor of fine whiskey. I couldn't leave it there. I reached for the pitcher, my hand shaking slightly. The glass feels cold and heavy in my palm. It was not something I could handle alone. I needed someone I trusted, someone with the knowledge and resources to analyze the contents of that jar, and the jar, or the space where that jar once was, could contain evidence. Gary, my old army mate Gary, a vet, yes, but also a brilliant chemist and a man of unwavering integrity. He owed me one from a few winters back. I quickly dialed his number, my voice tight with urgency when he answered. Gary, this is Frank. I need a favor, a big one. Frank, what's going on? Gary replied. I need you to test something for me. Gary, something important, something that could save a life and put a criminal behind bars, I replied, struggling to stay calm. What is it, Frank? What happened? He asked. Whiskey, Gary. I have a whiskey, and maybe something else. I need to know what's in it, and fast, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He was quiet for a moment, processing my words. I could almost hear the wheels turning in his mind. He didn't ask any questions, just gave me instructions about where and when to meet after hours. His voice had that low-key sincerity that could get the job done. That night, after dark, I drove the vet carefully. Wrapped in a paper bag next to me. The country roads lit the path. He wore a lab coat over his sweatshirt, the smell of disinfectant hanging in the air. a sharp reminder of the life and death decisions that played out within those walls. I looked him in the eye, my voice unwavering. "Just tell me what's in it, Gary, please, that's all I'm asking." He nodded, took the bag and disappeared inside, closing the door behind him with a firm click, and I was alone again. In the truck I left the engine running, the radio off, the silence broken only by the ticking of the dashboard clock. Outside the sky was a mass of ink without stars, the kind of night that floats everything away. The darkness seems to have drifted back, handwriting on the map. It had been so long since I'd seen it. Was I just clinging to Ethan's voice was grave. "Frank, you're not going to like this. There's something in the whiskey." Gary's voice was flat, emotionless. "Whitesnake," he paused, "in the right dose, it'll stop a man's heart." I closed my eyes, the weight of his words crushing me. White snake root, a deadly poison, added to the whiskey on purpose. It was all but confirmed. "You said Robert drank it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes," he confirmed. The silence stretched between us. "Didn't you try it?" he asked. "No," I replied. He breathed slowly. "Then you might have just dodged a bullet, Frank, a big one." And just like that, the call ended. The whiskey was the problem. The poison, it was all the same. Ethan sent me more than a gift. He sent me a death sentence. It meant war. He sent a test, but how to play the hand he's dealt. He did not come to me. Then an unbidden thought came to me. Liar. Ethan's wife, Robert's daughter. She will be devastated by it all, but may also be the only source of information. The more my mind raced, the more I had to figure out the next steps. My hand grips the phone tighter. I take a deep breath and dial Ethan's number. The dial tone sounded like a death knell. I thought it would go straight to voicemail, but I heard a click, and then her voice. "Hello, Dad." His voice was casual, as if nothing had happened, as if he didn't just try to kill a man, and possibly his own father. I had to control my anger, to play it cool. If I wanted to find out the truth, I couldn't let him know what I suspected. "Ethan, it's me," I said. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice still emotionless. "I wanted to ask you about that bottle of whiskey you gave me. The card I investigated." "What about it?" he replied, tone slightly sharper than before. "Well, I have a question. You were so curious when I told you I gave it to Robert. Why?" I asked. There was a long pause, the silence heavy with unspoken words. I thought he might hang up, but then he spoke. "Dad, I'm not sure what you're getting at, but I sent you a present. That's all. I was really hoping you'd drink it." "Ethan, don't give it to me. You knew I couldn't drink it. What's this all about?" I pressed. His voice grew cold. "Look, if you're going to start accusing me of anything, I'll hang up. I don't have time for this. It was a gift. Leave it alone." And with that he hung up. The line went dead, the silence reinforcing the turmoil in my mind. It was clear to me now he did it. He tried to kill me. Now I had to find out why, and I had to make sure he didn't hurt anyone else, especially Robert. Now I would turn to a more reliable resource, a person of pure heart, a person I trusted. Liar. My finger hovered over the keyboard. I had already called Linda, Reyes. Why not liar? It's not like I could get any worse in this scenario. "Hello," she said, slightly surprised. "Leah, this is Frank. I'm going to be honest, I have to ask you a few questions. What do you know?" There was a long pause, her voice shaking. She replied, "I asked Ethan what's going on. He's just telling me to shut up, so I don't end up like your friend and father-in-law, Robert." "Liar, this isn't a game. This is not a joke. What have you and Ethan been up to, I demand?" "That's why I'm scared," said Leah. "I don't know, but he wants me to find out something about your mother." I stopped in shock. My mother had been dead for years. Why this? Why? It makes no sense. I said, "It doesn't, Frank. I think he is losing it. When I spoke to him earlier, he mumbled about this farm, how it was all his and stolen from him," she explained. "That's why, liar. It's the farm. He wants revenge. It might not make sense, but it's the only answer I say." "Liar, I have to ask you something, and it's imperative that you be honest." I explain. "Are you safe?" She sobbed. "No, Frank. I'm scared he won't let me out of the house." "What am I doing? Get him attention. Run out the door and get me," I said. Liar hangs up. "Then I'll call Robert." It won't stand. It's gone way too far now. When Gary hung up after telling me the whiskey had whitesnake root in it, the world around me went very quiet, as if the house stopped breathing. I didn't sit with the key bed from my pickup. although I did sit from my chair for my jacket. The hook by the door, and on my way to St. Luke. The drive to town was all stoplights and empty intersections, the kind of late morning where the sun looks bright but gives no warmth. Out of habit, I parked in the far corner of the lot and walked quickly, one hand in my pocket, the other pressed against my ribs, as if I could steady whatever was moving inside me. Hospitals all smell the same, something sterile, cut with burnt coffee, and the light is always too white. A volunteer showed me to Robert's room. He didn't look like the man who climbed my roof without being asked. He looked paler, washed out, his skin a shade paler than the pillow under his head. The monitors at his bedside hum and blink in time, with a slow, persistent heartbeat. Linda was in a plastic chair, pulled as close as possible. She had that look I've seen 100 times, the one people wear when they're waiting for something that refuses to rush up and be over. "Frank," she said, and stood up. "Thank you for coming. How is he?" They there trying to stabilize his heart rhythm. Her hands were clasped on her chest, not praying, but as if holding the air tight would stop it from leaking out of her. They said they found signs of a plant toxin. They are still doing tests. I walked closer to the bed. Robert's mouth was parted, a line of breath in and a line of breath out. His hair, always neatly combed back, fell to his forehead in a way that made him look younger and more frail at the same time. I didn't belong here, not as family, not on paper. But blood is not the only measure of closeness. Sometimes it's the person who shows up with a hammer and a smile before you've had time to worry about your roof leaking. "Did he eat anything unusual last night?" I asked, "or drank something he doesn't normally eat?" "We both had one glass with dinner." She looked at me. The question was already there. "The bottle you brought with you." He said it was the best whiskey he'd ever tasted. He wanted to save the rest for something special. My jaw dropped without me saying it. "I need you to tell the doctors exactly that," I said. "Tell them it's new, unopened, and tell them I can get them a small sample from the same bottle." She reached out, as if she could take my hand, then changed her mind and grabbed the railing instead. "Frank, what is it, do you think?" "Do you think?" "I know what I'm thinking," I said, which was only half a lie, "but I'm going to find out." The doctor came in, a man in his 50s with a face that had learned not to react. He explained in quiet, practiced tones about rhythms and enzymes and observation. He didn't say what he didn't know, and he didn't know much yet. When he left, Linda sat down again, and I promised to call her as soon as I had something she could use. She nodded, but the nod had no weight. It was something to do with her head, because her hands were already committed to staying clenched. I walked out with my jaw still tight and my hands stuck in my jacket pockets. The automatic doors slid open and hit me with air that felt wrong. For October, clear as a postcard and cold as a church. In the truck, I didn't start the engine right away. I sat there with the key turned halfway and looked at my reflection in the rear view. I looked like a man who had nothing left to break, who hadn't been cracked once. "Whitesnake route," I said aloud, testing the words in the air like a carpenter checking a plank for warp. They sounded mean. They sounded deliberate. On the way home, the road washed out like a tape you've listened to too many times. I turned into my street and noticed nothing else. The mailboxes, the dog at the corner house, the man raking leaves with his son. I parked, locked the truck without thinking, and went straight to the fridge. The mason jar with the splash of whiskey was still there on the middle shelf, hidden behind the milk. I held it up to the light and watched the liquid curl against the glass as I tilted it. You wouldn't know by looking. You never do. All the worst things come dressed as something harmless. I put the jar down next to the sink and went to the trash. I poured in that little white vial yesterday. I didn't take the bag out. I'm an old man who lives alone, and my trash isn't filling up as fast as it used to. I lift the lid, look and feel my body go still. The bag was lifted and put back the wrong way around, and the vial was gone. I looked at the door. The deadbolt was set, as if I had left it last night. The windows were down and locked. I don't keep any spare keys under rocks or rugs. I keep no spare keys anywhere a reasonable fool might imagine, yet someone had been here. I can feel it, like how you know a room has been rearranged, even if you can't tell what has moved. I took a long breath in through my nose and let it out slowly. Don't panic. Panic is loud and stupid. I needed something quiet and useful. I picked up the phone and called Gary. "It's gone," I said when he answered. "What is the little vial I told you about?" "Someone took it out of my trash. I didn't move it." I know what my own hands have done in my own house. He didn't tell me I could be wrong. Gary understands the cost of ignoring what your gut already knows. You have to get law enforcement involved, he said. I can document what's in the whiskey, but that vial would have been clean evidence of handling. I know, I said. I will, and Frank. Yes, don't let whoever did this think you're sleeping on it. I made coffee I didn't want and sat at the table with a legal pad. The act of writing steadies me. I drew a line down the middle of the page and labeled the left side, what I know, and the right side, what I can prove. Under what I know, I wrote, Ethan sent the bottle. Ethan asked if I tried it. Ethan changed his tone when I said I gave it to Robert. The whiskey Gary tested has a white snake head. I wrote, I have a white snake root, Gary's test. The leftover sample is in the jar, the call from Ethan last night, if memory serves. Then I stared at the two columns and wanted to draw a bridge between them. Bridges don't appear because you want them to. You have to build them. I took the small digital voice recorder out of the desk drawer. It's old, a little scratched at the corners, a cheap thing that did its job without ever being thanked for it. I checked the battery, half full. I slipped it into the inside pocket of my jacket, right where its weight would feel like a hand on my chest, reminding me to breathe. It was just past noon when I moved into Ethan's development. His house sat in a row of other houses that looked like variations of the same idea. Neutral siding, brass numbers, a porch light that came on by itself when the sun started to rise. His truck was in the driveway, clean, a decade newer than mine. I walked up the path and knocked. He opened the door with a face that flipped twice before landing. Surprise, then calculation, then what he thought looked like warmth. Dad, he said, as if he had expected me, and also as if he had no idea what I might have. It's unexpected. Is it? I asked, and walked in without waiting. The place smelled of lemon and nothing else. He keeps it neat. Always. Everything square, left nothing out of place, except for the kind of books you buy to display you know something about. I heard about Robert, he said, closing the door. Scary liar is with him now. The doctors think it might be a virus. Is that what they think? I kept my voice low. If I pressed, he would put his heels on. If I showed gentleness, he would use it. That's what she said, he replied. That's what they say. I took it to the kitchen. There on the counter sat 3 bottles, 2 bourbon, 1 rye, lined up like soldiers. Not one of them was the brand I gave him. Not one of them opened. I looked back at him. He watched me look at his things, and he smiled like someone who believes his smile looks like it lands. Did you try me the bottle? I asked. He laughed softly. The whole point was for you to enjoy it. You know, for your birthday. No, I don't drink anymore. People change, he said with a shrug that made me feel like I had no particular interest. I moved a step closer to the counter and ran a finger along the edge of the empty glass that sat by the sink, as a man might do when killing time while his host makes coffee. Robert liked it, I said. Says his favorite pour is the one from the middle shelf, the single malt. He blinked only once, slower than a reflex. Yes, funny thing, I said, and I could feel the recorder in my pocket, steady as a heartbeat. I never told you where it was kept. For the smallest fraction of a second he went still, as an animal does when it hears a twig snap. Then his mouth pulled up on one side, and he shook his head with a little practiced laugh. You get chatty when you're sentimental. I didn't, I said, holding his eyes until he had to choose between looking away or staring down. At me, he chose a third option. He reached for a dish towel and began to dry a glass that had already been dried. Dad, he said, looking at the glass instead of me, you always think too much. You always find something to fix, even when no one asked for it. You sent me a $500 bottle that I can't drink. I said, I'm trying to fix it. He put the glass down and spread his hands like a man with nothing to hide. Then maybe not. Maybe give me the benefit of the doubt for once. His voice can be pretty sparse if you haven't listened to it in a few years. My son has a way of ringing true when he is being exercised. That pause from last night sat between us like a third person in the room, sitting on the counter and swinging his legs. I'm going to ask you a question, I said, and I'm going to let the silence afterward tell me the answer. He gave me a look like we were playing chess, and I announced my next move out loud. Well, did you tamper with that whiskey? Silence. It is a living thing if you use it right. The fridge hums. The clock on the microwave ticked from 12:09 to 12:10. A car drove past outside, slowly enough that we both heard the tires over the pavement. He didn't look away, he didn't speak either. "Goodbye, Ethan," I said, because sometimes leaving is the only sentence that counts. He said my name when I turned around. "Dad," in that tone where the word is both a hook and a warning. I stopped, but I didn't turn back. "You keep accusing me of things. You'll push me away," he said. "I don't accuse," I said to the door. "I collect." Outside, the air was crisp and a little metallic. I sat in the truck and pressed my thumb against the recorder's stop button. The red light is flashing. I put it on the seat next to me and stared at it like it was a witness I might have to call later. My hands were steady. My head was not. I didn't drive home. Not yet. I parked at the far edge of a grocery store lot where no one would bother me and made a call I'd been putting off since the moment Gary said Whitesnake, Detective Reyes. A voice said after 2 rings, "Detective, my name is Frank Dalton. I believe I may have information about a poisoning. I have a sample of the substance and an audio recording that may interest you." He didn't ask me to explain myself right there on the phone. Men who know their work do not demand the whole truth in the first breath. "Can you come in this afternoon?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I can." He gave me a time and an office number, tucked away in the back corridor of the station. When I hung up, I sat with my hands on the wheel and looked straight ahead. The grocery store's automatic doors kept opening for no one and closing for no one else. People came and went, carrying paper bags full of apples and milk and things that would make their houses smell after dinners. I remembered back home, I stopped by the mailbox, because sometimes you have to do something ordinary to keep the other stuff from swallowing you whole. Flyers, a bill, a grocery ad, and a postcard from a car dealership that I think can be bought with 0% financing. Inside, I put the mason jar in a Ziploc, sealed it like I knew what I was doing, and moved it into an old cigar tin I kept 4 nails. The recorder went in the same tin. I put the can in a paper bag with handles. I put that bag in another bag, because once you've made one thing disappear from your trash, double layering starts to feel less like paranoia and more like common sense. I called Linda. His answer on the second rang, voice small. "Frank, I'm going to the police," I said. "I have a monster and something else." "How is Robert resting?" she said. "They have him on a monitor. He keeps waking up and asking what day it is," I tell him, and he nods like he's trying to decide if he believes me. "I'll call you after I meet with the detective," I said. "Tell him I'll stop by if he wants to see an old face that doesn't ask him to be strong." She laughed, a single, breathless sound. "He likes being asked to be strong," she said, "but he likes you more." I locked, checked the back door, checked the window latches again, and walked out to the truck. The paper bag sat like a person on the passenger seat. I buckled it, because habit is comfort when sense is scarce. On the way to the station, I turned on the radio without listening. People were singing about things that sounded simple. It made me angry, and then it was my cooler, and then it was me, somehow, and smelled me in a small office, with a window that looked at a brick wall through a lot, but older than a newcomer. A tie that straightened more than once. I said yes, because my mouth was dry and because people refused everything he asked, so I did it. I gave him the dates, the words Ethan used, and the pauses that didn't feel like surprises. I didn't give him my theories. I gave him the index cards of the facts and let him stack them as he wanted. Then I put the paper bag on his desk, took out the tin, opened it, and put the mason jar of and the recorder on his start, a workpiece on his tap. He asked questions that sounded petty but weren't. "Who else has keys to your house? When was the last time you checked your trash? Did you mention the vial to anyone but Gary?" Then he lifted the recorder and weighed it in his hand, as a man does when he thinks about how heavy a word can be. "If you have to carry it, you see," he said, "it doesn't become a case because you and I both have a feeling. It becomes a case when what you gave me can survive other people looking at it." "I do," I said. "I want other people to look at it." He nodded. "We'll send the fluid to the state lab. We'll make a copy of your audio. If there's cause, we'll move. If there isn't, we'll tell you exactly why we can't. Are you okay with that?" "I am," I said, and meant it. "I'm not in the business of wanting the wrong man punished. I want the real truth to be told." As I stood to leave, he said my name, as if picking it up to see how it felt. "Mr. Dalton, yes. Don't talk to your son again until I tell you to. If he reaches out, pay Pay attention to the time and what he says, and keep your answers shorter than his questions." I nodded, surprised at the feeling that someone else was finally willing to carry a corner of the weight I was holding. Outside, the afternoon turned a dull grey, kind of clear, the kind that hurts your eyes more than it lights your way. I drove to the hospital. Linda was in the same chair, and the same machines were singing their quiet, electronic lullabies back, and his mouth was less tense about the breath that came and went, and his eyes burst open. "You must see yourself," I said. "Show up," I said. He closed his eyes again, nodded once, and drifted off. I stood there longer than I needed to, listening to the machine keep him honest about his heartbeat. Linda whispered things that belonged to no one but them. I walked out the hall and called Gary to thank him for moving faster than I had any right to ask. He told me this is what my friends are for and to watch. I told him I would at home. The house had the gall to be exactly as I left it. The silence sat in the rooms like a guest refusing to go home. I made myself an omelette that I didn't finish, and washed the pan because some things you do just to prove to yourself you're still the same person who does them. I went to the hall closet, pulled the fireproof box off the top shelf, and opened it on the kitchen table. It has the papers of a life, birth certificates, the deed to the house and Linda's rose gold wedding ring that I wasn't ready to part with. I added a post-it to the inside of the lid. "Whiskey sample with police. Do not throw away." I don't know who the note was for. Maybe it was for me. I slept on the couch with the hall light on. I hadn't done that since the night after my heart attack, and my chest didn't like the way those two facts looked, standing next to each other. I woke up before dawn because the body remembered old alarms. I made coffee and didn't drink it. I listened to the house breathing. When the sun finally decided to show itself, I called Linda and told her I would be there by noon. She said the doctor thought Robert would be moved out of the critical care unit if his numbers continued to rise. Behaved is a word for toddlers and heartbeats. I don't like the sound of it. By 10 o'clock the phone rang again. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail because I learned something important yesterday. You don't owe anyone an answer until you're ready to give it. The message came in after the second ring. I waited, then pressed play. "Dad, it's me." Ethan's voice, drawn tight as a thread. "We need to talk. Better sooner than later." He remained silent. "Call me back." I didn't. I wrote down the time and the exact words and put the note in the fireproof box because sometimes you have to make your evidence. I looked out the window at my yard, which refuses to stay green no matter how much a man waters it. The porch swing creaked once. No wind that I could see. The day was too quiet again. If you want me to say I wasn't scared, I won't. Fear is no longer something I hide from. It belongs to truth, as nails belong to wood. They keep it together. I stood there in the kitchen with my hand on the back of a chair and knew this much without writing it down. Whatever it was, it had gotten past the point where a father and son could make it up at a table by speaking more slowly and softly than last time. It was past the point where a bottle was just a gift and a hospital was just a place that happened to other people. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And I'm going to keep walking towards it. One room, one phone call, one steady breath at a time. There is a kind of silence that does not sit still. It walks. It taps the rim of your coffee mug. It looks at the phone on the counter and counts to 60 with you, then starts over. Detective Reyes told me not to talk to my son, so I didn't call Lethan back. I wrote down the time of his voicemail, as if it were a license plate I had to remember. In the morning I did exactly what the detective asked, and still the house felt guarded. I left the phone on the hall table and walked through the rooms with my hands behind my back. Not because I expected to find anything, but because men like me don't sit when we can stand, don't rest when there's a job undone. The October light came thinner today, a white sheet hung over the sun. I checked the back door. The window locks into the garage entrance. With the stubborn lock you have to lift as you turn. All good, all normal. Normal is not the same as safe. I made a second pot of coffee, didn't drink it, and opened the fireproof box on the kitchen table. Inside, the deed, a stack of insurance forms, Linda's ring, the index card, where I copied the exact words from Ethan's message. I added another card, Detective Reyes, 2:30 p.m., underlined twice. All morning I waited to call the station back, not because I was hesitant, but because I wanted to arrive with a day's worth of steadiness in me. Before leaving, I took another slow circle of the house. In the front house I stopped. The deadbolt, aligned with the strike plate, just a fraction off, a new scratch on the lip of the metal round, and light, the way a key that isn't cut perfectly will rub after a few uses. Nothing broken, nothing forced, just a mark that you only notice when you know the door like you know the bones in your hand. A thought parked itself in my chest and didn't move. Someone had let himself in. I went to the junk drawer and found a short piece of yarn and a piece of clear tape. I laid the wire over the bottom of the door frame and taped it so it would stay put. A trick I learned from a corporal who was tired of seeing his locker pulled through. You don't catch a thief, you tell a story if he was there. When I moved into the truck, the house looked empty and innocuous, which is exactly how a house should look. I retreated anyway, as if I had left a sleeping animal behind. St. Luke's is 3 turns and a long straight from the station, so I carried the hospital in my bones as I walked down the hall to Detective Reyes' office. He has one of those rooms that give them middle rank, small window, large desk, stacks of files that seem to grow in the dark. He stood to shake my hand and pointed me to a chair. He didn't look like a man who stayed up too late, or a man who slept too well. He looked like a man who knew what to do with a clean fact. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Dalton," he said, "and for the samples yesterday. We've sent them to the state lab. Your friend Gary's preliminary results match what we've seen. We're treating this seriously." "I assume it has serious levels," I said. He almost smiled. "It does. Right now that means we're gathering authentication, the hospital's panel, your audio, the chain of custody on your sample." He moved a right square towards me. "I want your timeline, in your own words. When you received the package, when you gave it to Mr. Carson, when your son called, when you discovered the vial was gone." I told him bluntly, watching his pen move. He did not pause except to check a time or a day. When I had finished, he tapped the pad with the end of the pen and leaned back. "You said the garbage bag was disturbed, turned the wrong way." I didn't move it. "Any sign of forced entry?" "No." "Anyone else with keys?" "No parts hidden." "No one I've given one to recently. My late wife had hers. My son had one when he was younger." "When was the last time you saw it in his possession?" The answer wanted to be a lifetime ago, but the truth entered a hospital. 5 years back, after the heart attack, when Ethan came home to grab a few things for me before I was discharged. He brought a bag with slippers, sweatpants, and my phone, charger at the time. I told him, thanks for the small grace of remembering the charger. I didn't ask him for my keys. I assumed I was going slowly on the kitchen counter. I said that I was going slowly on the heart attack. Then I don't remember him giving them back to me. Reyes was neither surprised nor pleased. If someone got in without violence, that helps explain the missing flask. Did anyone else know about the flask? Just Gary. I will ask him to document his conversation with you, just to show that we are not making things up in hindsight. He closed the block. "Mr. Dalton, I'm going to make it clear. Don't meet your son. If he invites you somewhere, let me know. If he shows up, call us. I don't think he's interested in a conversation." I thought of Ethan's voice on my voicemail, coiled tight like a cable under a car hood that you shouldn't touch while the engine is hot. "I'll do exactly what you say." He slid a card across the desk. "My cell. If you feel something is off, call. I'd rather be wrong twice than right too." "Late. I appreciate it," I said and stood. He did too. On the way out, the building smelled of toner and floor wax. I took the stairs down to flights and stopped on the landing to catch my breath. I wasn't out of breath. I checked that the ground beneath me was still the same ground I walked on when I entered. Linda's call came as I pulled into the hospital garage. I answered on the second ring. "Frank, he's better," she said with tears in her words. "They move him to a retirement unit out of criticism. He keeps apologizing every time he wakes up, like he thinks he's ruined someone's party. It'll be a party when he's home." I said, "Can I drop in, please?" Robert looked discolored but solid, propped up now, eyes brighter. He grabbed my forearm when I came in, that old working man's handshake where you anchor each other past the wrist. "You look worse today," he said, making Linda laugh through the tissue she held to her chin. "I brought my worst for a visit," I said, pulling up the chair. "I will behave better tomorrow." Linda excused herself to speak to a nurse, a woman who understood when a conversation needed privacy, even if she wasn't the one who asked for it. When the curtain closed, Robert lowered his voice. "Frank, between us," he looked at the door, then back. "Do you think Ethan did it? I guess that bottle wasn't a gift." He watched my face as if learning a language from it. "Are you going to be okay to handle this?" "I'm going to be legal," I said. "I'm going to be steady." That's not what I asked. I let the question stand long enough to tell him I heard it. "I'm going to be all right to handle it." He squeezed my forearm once and then let go. Men like us don't hug unless we're burying someone. The print is the permission slip to feel without the paperwork. The curtain opened, and Linda returned with a younger woman at her side, mid-30s, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, eyes rimmed, tired but sharp. I recognized her from pictures on the mantel at Ethan's Leah, my daughter-in-law. "We've spoken twice since the wedding," politely, like neighbors who live 2 blocks apart. "Frank," she said, I'm glad you're here." I stood up. "How are you?" She looked at Robert, afraid, angry, mostly scared. Her voice dropped. "We need to talk." Linda stroked Robert's hand and said, "I'll give you 2 a minute," and walked into the hallway. Leah gestured to the small family living room around the corner. It had a coffee machine that made everything taste like plastic, and 2 chairs with backs to straight, to be friendly. She didn't sit. I didn't either. "I don't know what you know," she said, "but I know Ethan has been different, distant, secretive for a long time. He keeps pots on a shelf in the garage, dried plants. He says it's for a hobby. He's joined online groups about herbalism." I didn't. She swallowed. "I didn't think it was related." "Did you hear that name?" Her eyes flashed. Recognition or fear or both. "Yeah, I saw it in his search history. I thought he was reading. That's all. Detective Reyes would like to speak with you if you were willing." She nodded too quickly. "I already called. I left a message." "Okay," I said. Relief and sadness are cousins. I felt one visit on behalf of the other. "Leah, if you have anything, screenshots, messages, pictures of those jars, keep them. Let the detective pull the strings." She looked at me hard enough to see me. "Why would he do this to you?" I could have said a dozen things. Money I wouldn't give him. Love I didn't give him the way he wanted it. Disappointments that grew hitches. Instead, I told the truth as I knew it. Because if he can't own the story, he will burn the page. She flinched as if the words were a concept. "He asked me this morning if I'd heard from you. He said he wanted to know if you liked the bottle." "What did you tell him?" "That you gave it to my father." We stood there for a few seconds with that sentence between us, the kind of thing that changes shape as you look at it. "Thank you," I said, "for telling me." "I'm sorry," she said, and I knew she meant all of it, not just the part she spoke out loud. We went back to Robert's room and said softer things about the weather and football and the kind of soup the cafeteria tries to call chicken noodle. I left when the nurse came to check his monitors, promised to bring magazines and pretend that mattered to the outcome. On the way home I stopped at the hardware store. I bought 2 new deadbolts and a pack of those little jamming alarms that screech when a door opens when they are set. The clerk called me and made a comment about winter coming early. I said something about the need to move forward. He packed the locks like they were groceries and told me to have a good day. We say this to each other. Have a nice day, if the day wants to listen. At home, the wire I taped over the door frame was exactly where I put it, intact. I stepped over it and closed the door behind me with a soft click. I thought about calling a locksmith, but putting in the deadbolts myself felt like making my bed in a strange motel. If I do, I might be able to lay my head down without all the noise. I installed the first lock on the back door, then the second on the front, screwing the plates in slowly and firmly, the muscles in my forearms familiar with the angle and the thrust. The little alarms went off on the door frames with a sound, like a bandage peeling off. I sat them and opened the doors to hear the shrill proof that they would work. They did well. By the time I finished, the sun had set enough to cast long shadows across the floor. I heated a can of soup and ate it standing up, with the bowl in my left hand and the spoon in my right. Old habits, less washing like that. The phone buzzed. On the hall table I didn't jump. I walked towards it at the speed of a man going to open his door. Unknown number again. I let it buzz. It stopped. Seconds later a text appeared. "Ethan, we need to talk face to face today." A second text followed before I could think of the first. "Ethan, don't make it worse than it is." I put the phone down like it might burn me. I wrote the time and the texts exactly as they came in on an index card and added the card to the fireproof box. Then I took Detective Reyes' card out of my wallet and dialed. He picked up the second ring. "Reyes, this is Dalton," I said. "He asks to meet." "Don't." he said, the 2 words clear like a closing gate. Forward me the texts. I'll log them. If he calls, let it go to voicemail. He left one earlier. I transcribed it. Good. Keep it up. I hesitated. Detective, will you come and look at my front door? I think someone used a key that wasn't mine. I can send an officer to photograph and document. I'll come in the next hour. When I'm clean. He arrived 40 minutes later with a young uniform named Patel. They took down the stitch plate, the tiny scratches where the key scraped, the wire like a tripline. Reyes didn't make a face. He doesn't look like a man who enjoys being right, but he also doesn't waste energy pretending to be surprised if he's not the original set. He asked. I went to the hall closet and pulled down the little tinware. We kept extras 20 years ago. Inside, 2 brass keys marked front and back in my wife's neat letters, a male key, and a key that shouldn't have been there. A copy without marks, a haircut from the middle, so it didn't sit awkwardly in the tin. I said. We label everything. Reyes het Patel, Lotsack.